So you can hear me and you can also see the slides. So can you hear me and can you see the slides?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So yeah, I'm gonna attempt to speak about Sukadeva Goswami, one of the Mahajans. I'm not sure what I'm going to speak. I'm also a little bit nervous in the association of so many Vaishnavas, but I will try my best. So I'm seeking for your kind, blessings. Hopefully I can say something which is helpful, which might be inspiring for you. And I try to also encourage myself that I heard once that we shouldn't feel so low, because if Krishna is so potent, so if he wants anything to happen, it will eventually happen. His greatness is much bigger than any of our shortcomings, as low as they are. So Krishna's greatness is much bigger than as low our shortcomings. So I will try to say something about this great personality. I did a bit of a research, so I will go through the slides. So these are the 12 Mahajans, and some of them are very, very nicely presented. I'm not gonna give as good presentations as my predecessors or my successors will. Definitely not as good as His Grace Murli Manohar Prabhu. That was really great last week, but I will try to attempt to share at least something. Hopefully everyone hears something new. If not new, at least something that's reminding you of Krishna and his great devotees. So one thing, this is kind of the agenda. I try to be as quick as I can today, not to hold you up for long, but this is the agenda. So I tried to figure out the glories of Sukadeva Goswami and what are those cornerstones in his life, which I could speak about. And it had an impact on me, this prayer, that I'm like a tree-like soul. You will see later why I'm saying that now, but yeah, I feel like the tree-like person, and hopefully I can still speak some Vaishnava Katha, in this case, Vaishnava talk about Sukadeva Goswami. So yeah, I will just briefly mention the presentation style that I kind of learned during my Vedic studies. And I think this is a really great presentation style. And by the way, most of the things that I'm going to speak is from the first and second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, simply because that's what I have learned so far in deeper details. So most of the references will be from those two cantos. So this is what I was taught during my Vedic studies, that this is a formula really good and helpful to follow. So this is called PLEASE, actually, so a nice acronym. And yeah, you can see what each letter abbreviates. A personal application, which is very important, how we can put what we learned into practice, the actual lesson learned, then examples of great personalities, in this case Sukadeva Goswami. Then analogies, again, help us to make the subject relatable for us in the present circumstance. Obviously, like anything in our tradition, it has to have Shastric connection. So everything has to be authorized and bona fide. And elaboration, so going into the pastimes and so on. So theory and practice, these are just a few photos. What we learn, the lessons, what we take away and conclude from these great stories and the lives of these great personalities. Examples are enlightening, like Srila Prabhupada's example. I will try to come back to that. Analogy, very important as well, because sometimes the subject is deep for us to understand in the scriptures, and when we get some analogies from our lives, we can relate to them more and understand it. Shastric connection, very important, and Srila Prabhupada has written so many books, so we are not in shortage of that. And elaboration, again, who was the person who did something, under what time they did something, why they actually performed that pastime, what they actually performed, how they performed, so the details, where, so we can relate to the holy places. So this is kind of the, like that, just to give the style. Maybe if you also study scriptures, I personally find it inspiring anyway. So yeah, so it all comes from the lineage, so, and authority and being bona fide. So the lineage. So in most presentations, we try to derive where a great personality comes from. So we know that we are ISKCON devotees, or we try to be ISKCON devotees, we are ISKCONized, but actually we are Vaishnavas, and we are not just Vaishnavas, we are also Vaishnava means, as you probably know, worshipper of Vishnu. We are not just Vaishnavas, but we are also Gaudiya Vaishnavas, and this Gaudiya Vaishnava tradition comes from West Bengal, Navadvip, where Chaitanya Mahaprabhu took birth. And we are not just Gaudiya Vaishnavas, we actually belong to one of the sampradayas, one of the 4 sampradayas. And what we belong to is, our tradition is in the Brahma Madhava Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya. So that means the knowledge comes through Brahma, from Krishna. So the lineage that it comes from Krishna down to Sukadeva Goswami, it goes like this. So on the left side, you can see Krishna passing the knowledge to Brahma, and the creator of this universe. And then Brahma is a disciple there. And then in the next photo in the middle, he becomes the spiritual master. So it's like a proper disciplic succession. So whoever is a spiritual master eventually was a disciple before, except Krishna. So so then Brahma teaches this knowledge to Narada Muni. You can see it in the middle. You can recognize Narada Muni from his instrument. And then finally, Narada Muni inspired Vyasadeva to compile the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Vedanta Sutra, basically, because Vyasadeva was not happy with all the Vedas that he wrote. Something was missing, so he was lamenting, and eventually Narada Muni came and inspired him to write the Vedanta Sutra, in particular to glorify Krishna directly. So here we come to Vyasadeva, and then the final line there is from Vyasadeva to Sukadeva Goswami. So Vyasadeva was the father of Shukadev, sorry, I'm always saying this wrong. Sukadeva Goswami. Sukadeva Goswami. Yeah. So his father was Vyasadeva, also called as Bhadrayan. Sukadeva Goswami's mother was Vitika, and his spiritual grandfather was Narada Muni. Which Timothy just spoke about. So Bhadrayan, I might be able to explain later what it means. This name is also has a meaning behind it. But yeah, so the knowledge, this came down from Vyasadeva to Sukadeva. So Vyasadeva again compiled the Vedanta Sutra, and Sukadeva Goswami was actually who spoke this. And basically anyone who starts speaking about the Bhagavatam is typically offering obeisances to Sukadeva Goswami in the mood of like Sutta Goswami did that when he was speaking also the Bhagavatam to the Naimisharanya sages. And yeah, that's just as a tradition. Right. The next one that I found that's worth speaking about is what happened to Sukadeva Goswami before he took birth. Now you could say, before birth, what does that mean? So yeah, there's a little pastime there. Does any of you know what Shuka means? What does Shuka actually mean in plain English?
Parrot.
That's it. So it means parrot. So Sukadeva Goswami, you know what Dev means, you know what Goswami means, and Shuka means parrot, as Mataji said. So there is a little pastime there I will try to share it. I'm not sure if I can say all the details, but I try to memorize it. So basically, um, Sukadeva Goswami was a parrot, but not an ordinary parrot. So he was like, typically when you hear the word parrot, it can have a bit of negative connotation because like, you're just repeating like a parrot. But actually, Sukadeva Goswami was a very smart parrot as well as spiritual, obviously. So he was Krishna's and Radharani's parrot, and in particular Radharani's. So he used to carry messages to Krishna between the two. And so he was directly involved in this service and this Krishna speak katha. And one day, so one day they finished, they were winding up the pastimes on earth, and they were about to go back to the spiritual world. And they were going back to the spiritual world, and then the parrot also wanted to go back with them because he was Radharani's parrot. But Radharani said, no, you can't come back. You have some service left on this earth. So you have to stay. And he wasn't really content and happy about that. So he had to stay. So while Radharani and Krishna departed, he had to stay. But because he was always, listening to Krishna Katha, he was looking for opportunities. What to do now? He doesn't hear it anywhere. And just checking my notes. So that was it. And one day, so he was looking again to continue to the stories, hearing stories about Krishna and Radharani, because he was unhappy. He felt like almost like dying, without these stories. And once he heard Lord Shiva actually speaking the Bhagavatam to his wife Parvati. So very quickly he started flying there. But what was happening is as Lord Shiva was speaking the Bhagavatam, Parvati was always saying, okay, just to indicate that he's listening to the Bhagavatam speech. But eventually she fell asleep. After some time, she fell asleep. But what it would mean that is Shiva would stop talking about the Bhagavatam. So Sukadeva Goswami, in the form of the parrot, really wanted to avoid this. So he was sitting on the tree branch above Shiva, and what happened was he was mimicking, he was replicating the sound of okay, so that the speaking of the Bhagavatam would carry on and continue. So, but Shiva didn't know. Shiva thought that Parvati was, responding. So all good. He continued the Bhagavatam. No sign or indication yet of Parvati falling asleep. But as soon as the Bhagavatam was finished, Shiva would notice that Parvati she actually fell asleep, and Parvati also admitted that. So he started looking, who was that who said these things? And he started looking around, and finally he saw that there was a parrot, and then he started chasing the parrot, but the parrot flew away. So he was chasing the parrot, and the parrot actually, which was Sukadeva Goswami, he flew to Vyasadev's place, and finally, when Shiva came there, he was very, very angry. He actually wanted to kill the parrot because speaking the Bhagavatam to someone who is not qualified can cause great disturbances in society. So he wanted to kill the parrot. So in this way, he was inquiring from Vyasadeva, where is this parrot? And Vyasadeva said, you already spoke the Bhagavatam, and it makes anyone eternal. and live forever. So now even if you wanted to kill the parrot, it's not possible. So then Shiva was okay, fine. So he left, and then eventually we come to the, so this is the end of the story mostly. So we come to the birth of Sukadeva Goswami. So in the form of the parrot, he actually entered the womb of Vitika, Vyasadev's wife. And yeah, so this is actually not a photo about Sukadeva Goswami in the womb, because I couldn't find a photo about that. This is actually Parikshit Maharaj, but you can imagine still figuratively it's his being in the womb. And the interesting thing about this pastime as well, do you know for how long Sukadeva Goswami stayed in the womb of his mother? Does anyone know by any chance?
16 years?
16 years.
That's right.
Yeah, 16 years.
16 years. So that's a long time. I mean, my niece
Was appeared, he was the age of 16.
Yes, that's right. So my niece gave birth like 1 year ago and a half, but she said 9 months was enough.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine, but what I just can imagine, that's probably a lot. So it's a big burden, a big, like, also for the physically, but also mentally. So he stayed in the womb for 16 years, and that's quite unique. And he was staying upside down, and he didn't want to come out. And does anyone know why he didn't want to come out?
Yes, he didn't want it to get contaminated and worldly, because as a child, when the child comes up, that one is
afraid of material world.
Material world.
Correct. So he
all
didn't
the
want to.
knowledge, and when he comes out, he wanted to just go and preach.
Exactly. So that was the reason, actually. So he didn't want to get affected by Maya even for a moment. So he was afraid of that. So that's why he actually stayed in the womb for such a long time. And Vyasadeva tried actually to tell him that, you can come out, I will protect you. Why do you keep your mother suffering like this? Please come out. But he said, no, I won't come out into Maya. And then Vyasadeva said, I will remove this Maya, please come out. And he said, no, I don't believe you.
Vyasadeva requested him in the end.
Yeah.
Exactly. So then said, okay, you don't believe me. Will you believe anyone? Who will you believe? And he said, I will believe Krishna. If Krishna says so, I will come out. So then he started praying to Krishna, actually. And in fact, even earlier than that, Vyasadeva was, I think he was like praying for a son. But in this particular occurrence, he started praying to Krishna to please come and convince my son to come out and release the burden from the mother. So Krishna actually appeared because Krishna is very merciful. So he did actually appear. And now this is a proper image it's actually about Sukadeva Goswami. So this image. Yeah, so Krishna actually appeared, and then he said, yeah, Krishna reassured Sukadeva Goswami that he wouldn't fall into Maya, he will protect him. So then finally he came out. And this is also, by the way, by the Vyasadev's other name is Bhadrayan, and Sukadeva Goswami is Bhadrayani. So Sukadeva Goswami was also the fulfillment of his prayer of having a son. So anyway, Sukadeva Goswami came out. So this was an interesting thing with the mother. I find it interesting. Yeah, so he appeared, but not like staying around and playing there and going through the usual ceremonies that one is going through after birth. So he actually ran to the forest, and his father tried to catch him, but he just could not. So he ran into the forest again to avoid any familial affection. He was really detached even from that. Unfortunately, I have to speed up a bit because I have more slides. But yeah, he was running to the forest, and so this is one thing which I found really inspiring to read when I was doing my research, that when he was running to the forest, his father tried to catch him and come back, please come back, my son, please come back, my son, don't go to the forest. But Sukadeva Goswami wouldn't even look at his own father. He would just, run. And the trees were echoing as Vasudeva was calling. And yeah, the trees generally don't speak, but by Sukadeva Goswami's influence, I mean, his influence is so great that even trees started speaking Harikatha in his assembly. So this comes back to the point I mentioned in the beginning, that a Bhagavatam speaker typically speaks and prays in humility, like, I'm one of those trees. And Sukadeva Goswami is so powerful that by his association, even trees start speaking. So I'm so dull like a tree, but you inspire even those trees to speak. So I pray that you inspire this tree-like person to also speak some Harikatha. One interesting thing about Sukadeva Goswami is it's his father Vyasudeva. Actually, there's an interesting story about Sukadeva Goswami, and Prabhupada mentions it in the purport, actually, in the Srimad Bhagavatam, in the first canto, that similarly to the Kumaras, the four Kumaras, I think you may know that they were initially impersonalists, not Mayavadis, Brahmavadis, but still they played the role of impersonalist before getting attached to the fragrance of Krishna's lotus feet. And Sukadeva Goswami also seems to have played this role of being an impersonalist for some time before becoming again personalist. This is, I think, I read this in the second canto, that this was because to convince the impersonalist people that, the right thing is to turn to personalism. So then Vyasadeva tried to reclaim his son, to come back. So he sent his disciples to recite some verses from the Srimad Bhagavatam. So there were two specific verses. I won't go into the details, but then Sukadeva Goswami really liked those verses and he wanted to learn more. So his father's disciples said, sure, we can, teach you more, just come back. But they didn't say that it was Vyasadeva who can teach more. And he eventually come back. He finally reunited with his father, and then his father gave him the teachings of the Srimad Bhagavatam. So again, it's very important in our tradition to be bona fide and authorized. So this is all coming in the cyclic succession properly and nicely. Right, so the next stage in his life is the external appearance. This is a bit esoteric, I found it, but maybe we can still conclude some lessons from it. So Sukadeva, this is again a proper photo from Sukadeva Goswami's life. Very consistently found it in various presentations. So he was really dressing like the 10 directions, as it was said, which means basically he wasn't wearing anything except kopins, which is very, very small amount of clothes, basically. Otherwise, his body was naked. And there are verses in the Bhagavatam where the damsels or the apsaras, they were not disturbed by this because they knew that Sukadeva Goswami was really, really detached. He was on a very different platform to other people or the society. So he was dressing like this, and or not dressing, and yeah, completely detached. He wasn't on a bodily platform at all. And his body was still shining from the spiritual, energy and spiritual Shakti, basically. But he was completely misunderstood. So children were following him and they were making fun of him, throwing dust at him and cracking jokes about him. And they thought he's a madman. I mean, he's walking naked. We would probably think the same, So we can relate to those children. But actually, he was very wise and totally detached. He just didn't care. yeah, so that was, and the children would pull his seeker and even spitting at him, you know, throwing rocks and all that. He still wouldn't care. He wouldn't get offended or anything, you know. He would just, you know, wander around and preach the message of Bhagavatam, you know. So yeah, like this, and Vyasadeva in particular, when Vyasadeva was going around as well, the Damsas were a bit more reserved because he was a householder, whereas Sukadeva Goswami was a complete sannyas. So there are some references from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Don't worry about the details. I just really wanted to indicate that it's not trying to come up with something new or concoct anything. But yeah, so he was. There's actually some verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam, very beautiful description of his bodily luster and external appearance, and yeah, so that's some wonderful, really wonderful verses. Like, for example, he looked very fresh, very youthful, filled with so much spiritual energy, light and effulgence emanating from his body. Hands very soft and tight as well, arms very soft as well, even the shoulders not skinny, so no protruding collarbones, and cheeks also very soft, and his whole form like, you know, soft and like a butter. Eyes were very beautifully formed, wide and long, elongated, with big eyeballs, very nice eyelashes, straight up, upheld nose. Yeah, it's all, you know, a very beautiful descriptions. If anyone wants to go into that, it's in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Eyebrows also very perfect. It's actually the last chapter of the first canto. Yeah, very, very effulgent and like that. So those were the external signs of him, but no other external symbols, like, you know, no Brahmana thread and things like that. He was, again, or not books with him. He was like a Brahmana. He was very, 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 very detached. Yeah, he just, you know, he just never understood whether clothes are on or off, or he was body or on or off. He was, you know, at a completely different level. It's very hard to relate to this for us, but it does show how detached he was. Actually, he was an avadut, you know, no idea of his body. And he definitely couldn't be understood by society. So for sure not. Right, so I'm going to move on. So this is what society is like, you know, very cold-hearted, still-hearted, speaking like, yeah, like that. So this is what society was like, and probably it's much worse now. So the society couldn't really understand him. Fine. So we come to the main point, that it was actually his pastime in the Bhagavatam, actually. So his main activity was actually speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj. Yeah. So yeah, that's it, Parikshit Maharaj. So when he arrived, again, you can see it from his external appearance, completely different, you know, like, wow, so detached. Yeah, so not just detached, like sentimentally, but also like, you know, proper foundation behind it. So then he spoke to the Bhagavatam to the sages assembled there, and also primarily to Parikshit Maharaj. And does any of you know why he was speaking to the Bhagavatam to Parikshit Maharaj? What was the occasion? Why did that happen? Why did Parikshit Maharaj have to hear the Bhagavatam?
Because he only had a very short time to live.
Correct. How short?
I think it was about a week. I can't remember exactly.
Yes.
He was due to be bitten by a snake bird.
7 days.
7 days. Thank you.
And do you know why he was cursed?
Wasn't he cursed by the son of a Brahmin?
Yes, good.
I can't remember the details. So.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because Parikshit Maharaj was a king. And he went on a tour, hunting, and then he got thirsty. So he arrived at this Rishi's ashram, and the Rishi was in meditation. So he didn't notice that the king has come. And because Parikshit had a Kalki in his Kali in his crown, because when Kali went to Parikshit, King Parikshit, to ask the place for, and King Parikshit gave him a place where there is a diamond and all that, gold and diamond. Because he was wearing that gold and diamond crown, so his what's called intelligent become that as well. So he got angry, why I'm not being respected? Otherwise, he was a very nice person, never had done this. But because of the Kali in his crown, he did this behavior. So because he thought he's not answering, just pretending. So, and then he didn't know what to do. So he found a dead snake on the side. So he put it on his neck. And then when his son came, Brahmin's son came, and he thought, who has done this? And he cursed him. Whoever has done it, that's it. So when Parikshit Maharaj came to know, then he didn't have a crown on his head. So he realized, after when he came, he realized that he's done something wrong. So when this came, he accepted. And then he left his kingdom, and then he went to forest, and he wanted to do asked what he should be doing, and that all his ministers, and they said that should be listening Bhagavatam.
Correct.
To get relief from it.
So Parikshit Maharaj accepted that curse.
He
Yeah.
could have said, and they could have revealed different ways, but he said, no, I've done a mistake, and I saw that's his humbleness. That's what we have to learn from this, that we should, if we have done some mistake, we should accept it, not try to hide it.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, he could have counteracted just like
Because he's a king, he could have done it, but he said no. So he immediately left, and then at the bank of the river, Sukadeva Goswami arrived, and then he was praying to him to get recite Bhagavatam. So okay, now carry on. Sorry.
Thank you. That's better.
I thought I just enlightened a bit.
Can I just add something, Prabhu?
Yeah, sure.
It may be of small import, but I've always been curious about the fact that he was bitten by a snake bird, because I didn't know what that was. I didn't know that you could get a snake bird. But interestingly enough, I saw a short video on YouTube a couple of months ago, and this person had been in somewhere like the Amazon or something like that, some forest, and he got this creature, and he was filming it, and it was actually a snake, but it looked like a bird as well, and it had kind of a beak. The mouth was like a beak, but it was actually like, and it was very blackish in color, and it was about this sort of size. So it didn't seem to look like a trick. It looked real. I've never seen anything like that before, but it just it might be adding a little bit of substance to some of these stories, which we believe, but it's nice to see a little bit of proof every now and then, isn't it?
Yes, thank you.
So I just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, thank you very much. That's brilliant. So yeah, so Sukadeva Goswami arrived, and all the sages who assembled, and not just from India, from all parts of the world, not just from all parts of the world, from the whole universe, and even demigods from the heavens. So it was a really big and very, very respectable assembly. But they had different ideas. They had, some of them had like idea that Parikshit Maharaj should now do dhyana yoga, focus himself on the super soul. Some thought that he should do tapasya, Some thought that he should do sacrifices. Some other sages thought that he should give charity because he was a king, so he should be very charitable. And then Sukadeva Goswami came to bring order to all these different conceptions. I heard an interesting story when, medicine, doctors argue that no, we should follow Ayurveda, and some says no, we should follow allopathy, and then some others say no, we should follow naturopathy. But then a devotee says we should follow Tirupati. so Krishna. So see, in a similar way, Sukadeva Goswami tried to bring order to this assembly. So he was coming. All the sages were there, and there were also special guests there or special people. So all the sages stood up and bowed down and paid obeisance to Sukadeva Goswami, except three personalities. Do you know who those three were? Who stayed seated? And so there were three special people in the assembly. You can see three of them, I think, two. So one was his father himself. He was in the assembly. Vasudev. The other one was Narada Muni. You can see him with the instrument. And the third was Parashuram. But except all those, because they were seniors to him, but even they were there. So this is a really wonderful assembly where the Bhagavatam was spoken. It's not just an ordinary assembly, or not just even an ordinary Vaishnava assembly. It's like, so actually Prabhupada explains all this in the purport as if he was also sitting there, like, wow, and on the right side, by the way. Okay, so this is another question. Sorry, I'm testing my knowledge as well and yours as well. But we know that the Bhagavatam was spoken by Sukadeva Goswami to Parikshit Maharaj, but actually there's another line going, another Bhagavatam explanation going on. So who was the other one, and who spoke the Bhagavatam, and to what audience, if you know? So the other one was Sutta Goswami spoke also to the Naimisharanya sages. So the right photo is actually about that. Naimisharanya sages and Sutta Goswami. Okay, I'm trying to speed up a bit so that we can finish it in time. So obviously the main topic, subject matter of his talks was speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam. I tried to choose a special photo about the second canto with Shri Shri Radhalandan Ishwara on it. So there's a special edition of the second canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. So yeah, here is speaking the Srimad Bhagavatam actually, which is the cleanest Bhagavad Purana basically. And yeah, to all the sages and munis. There are 12 cantos in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I think maybe 18 books, because some of the cantos are multiple books. And do you know how many verses altogether the Srimad Bhagavatam has?
18,000.
That's it. Very good. Without preparation, very good. Okay, so so he was speaking all of it to Parikshit Maharaj, 7 days and 7 nights. And Parikshit Maharaj didn't fall asleep like Parvati or like us in the Bhagavatam class. So he was fully awake, fully affectionate, fully focused, and fully concentrated on this Bhagavatam.
Have breaks to have tea or water or anything to eat. No lunch break, no tea break.
No.
He was continuously just listening.
Just listening, not checking the clock, not turning around to check the clock, how much time left until prasadam. Oh, by the way, and one thing I really wanted to mention in this context, so many sages assembled here in this place, But you know, at that time, they didn't have like social media like we have these days, like WhatsApp or Instagram or whatever. But it's somehow, and you know, the curse was very sudden. You know, there's no time to book, like, you know, we would book planes and whatnot. No, they all assembled. It's all very, you know, very like, wow, wonderful story, without all the social media, even without phones, you know, without even the old styles text messages. They just all assembled from all parts of the world and universe. It's wow. So yeah, and then Sukadeva Goswami was speaking the Bhagavatam to the audience. Parikshit Maharaj had two questions to Sukadeva Goswami. Do you know what two questions he asked from Sukadeva Goswami?
Hare Krishna, that's no problem. Was one of them, what is the goal of life, or what is the purpose of life?
Yes.
Was that one of his questions?
Yeah, this is great. This is one of them. And what was the other? So,
What should we, what is the most, maybe it's linked to the first one. What's the most important thing is that we should all be doing, something like that.
So the second is, as you say, it's linked. So the second one is pretty much the same, except that what should one do exactly when someone is about to die? What should he worship? What should he hear? What should he listen to? And what he shouldn't listen to? What he shouldn't hear? What he should not worship? So these were the two main questions that Parikshit Maharaj opened up to Sukadeva Goswami. So that was like this conversation starter, icebreaker. So this was the inquiry from Parikshit Maharaj. So Sukadeva Goswami started speaking on these two subjects. And you know, all the rishis, rajarshis, so all the kings, devarshis, all the devatas, all the demigods, all again attended from all parts of the world. And one thing I really wanted to, so again, these are just further illustration, if we can go through this quickly. Yeah, some more photos. I think that's all I could find. And one thing, remember, as an analogy, so like there's this example I was reading that when there is a fruit, you know, when the parrot beak, when it's touching the fruit, it becomes really sweet, or at least sweeter, and the juice and the taste becomes intensified. And similarly, as Sukadeva Goswami was reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, it really became sweeter for the audience, like a ripened fruit. So it made the subject really very sweet and very special, like a mango. And he wasn't just, you know, repeating it blindly. He could, you know, say it like it was required in that circumstance. So not just like repeating blindly like a parrot, you know. It was a really intelligent parrot, definitely without negative connotations. And yeah, everyone was relishing the Srimad Bhagavatam recitation there. And they're also like a perfect example for guru disciple for us, you know, like a disciple should, you know, hear attentively and submissively, and yeah, from such great gurus. So this is the last photo I had about his speaking. Again, just some reference to the scripture, so you know that it's all by the scriptures itself. Oh, and by the way, and Prabhu has said in the beginning, Satyanarayana Prabhu, he was only 16 years old, which is kind of surprising if you think about it, because, or at least he looked like 16 years old anyway. But even if he was a bit older, he was definitely younger than the sages. But internally, he was so wise and so enlightened that, you know, all these great sages, you know, in such senior age, they were listening to him. And even the children, you know, who used to like make jokes of him, they really regretted their mistakes, you know, because they realized, wow, this is a really special person, actually. And definitely not an ordinary person. Right, so I thought this might be an interesting thing to show. So the Bhagavatam was spoken in a place not far from Delhi, or not far from Hastinapur, on the rivers of the Ganges. So on the left side, you can see Delhi, where it is. and yeah, Delhi, and about 2-3 hours drive, there's this place above called Morna. I may pronounce it incorrect, I'm sorry about that if so. But then on the second picture, you can see where Shukratal is. So it's very close to Morna. So it's like about 2-3 hours drive from Delhi, where the Bhagavatam was spoken. And it's about, I even checked it on barefoot. So by Google Maps, I checked how much they had to walk at that time. It's about a day. So not at all that far. And yeah, and so if I ever go to India and I have the opportunity, I'd like to visit this place. There is currently an ashram there. Maybe not ISKCON ashram, I'm not sure, but there's an ashram there at least. And yeah, again, it was spoken under this very, very old tree now. I think it's 5,100 years old tree. And that was where the actual Bhagavatam recitation took place. So I thought that's really powerful for me, at least, to know this and see these photos, that it's actually real. The continuity through that tree is still given to us. So yeah, one day, hopefully I can visit that place, because it's definitely a holy place. So yeah, I'm coming to the last part of the presentation, which is after speaking, what happened to Sukadeva Goswami. We don't hear so much. Even from the Bhagavatam, we just learn about whatever he explained to Parikshit Maharaj. But actually, I tried to research what happened to him after he was speaking. I will be honest, I couldn't find a lot of information available, not on any of this. But yeah, exactly. So I was thinking, it's some of my speculation, so please, this one is my just thought process, some of it. So he was definitely wandering around. We learned that before, it's backed by the scriptures. He was wandering around. Actually, he heard the Bhagavatam from, he actually learned the Bhagavatam from 4 different personalities, not just Vyasadeva. What we learned today, it was Vyasadeva. It was Lord Shiva, and he was a parrot. Actually, there were 2 more personalities he learned the Bhagavatam from. But he was always wandering around, preaching the message of the Bhagavatam. So in this way, he kind of mysteriously appeared at Shukrata, but then also he kind of mysteriously disappeared. Wikipedia says he was also living at the end of his life in a Shukachari cave. So I took that information there. But my question, and I put it a question here because it was my speculation that, well, he really wanted to go back to the spiritual world with Radharani and Krishna. So maybe once he fulfilled the service of speaking the Bhagavatam, maybe he eventually slowly went back and he left his very, very big and amazing legacy for us, which is the Srimad Bhagavatam itself. So that's what I was thinking. I was really researching on this topic, but not much found. But I think his main mission was anyway to speak the Bhagavatam. So yeah, some of the takeaways I will try to summarize. So we also need to prepare for death, as Parikshit Maharaj. Actually, Parikshit Maharaj was fortunate. You could say he was unfortunate because he had to die, but actually he was fortunate because he knew exactly that in 7 days he will die. So we don't actually know. We might say Parikshit Maharaj was unfortunate, but in some ways we are more unfortunate because we don't know. It could be today, it could be tomorrow. So we really have to prepare for that every moment in our life. We need to develop gratitude in our life, and we really depend so much on the mercy of Vaishnavas. I was thinking like Sukadeva Goswami. Actually, I didn't say that, but Sukadeva Goswami wasn't like invited to Shukrata to explain the Bhagavatam. He just appeared there by his mercy, just like Srila Prabhupada. In the West, did anyone call Srila Prabhupada? Did the hippies call him like, come here and enlighten us? No, they were in darkness. And Srila Prabhupada, by his mercy, appeared, just like Sukadeva Goswami, and spread the message of Krishna. And yeah, actually, Srila Prabhupada also gave the Bhagavatam to the Westerners, to us, to the hippies. So mercy is very important. We can't do anything without that. And again, no fault finding like the children in Sukadeva Goswami. It's just, no. complete detachment like Sukadeva Goswami was. We may not be able to do at that level, but we can perhaps aim for a little detachment in our life. Absorption, Parikshit Maharaj and Sukadeva Goswami, absorption in Bhagavatam, the way they were hearing and glorifying Krishna through the Bhagavatam. Personally, I started attending more and more for the morning programs to also listen to the Srimad Bhagavatam there. And no selfish agenda as well when we preach. Like Sukadeva Goswami, you know, he didn't really have to speak the Bhagavatam to the sages and to Parikshit Maharaj, but he's out of his causeless mercy, he did anyway. But he had no selfish agenda that I gain anything. Even when it's mentioned when Sukadeva Goswami went to the householders, he would only stay for the duration of cowing milk, maximum half an hour, nothing longer. Yeah, so he was a truly amazing personality. So I just like to pay my obeisances and respects, great respect and reverence to Satyanarayana Prabhu and Madhu Mataji for giving us all this opportunity. I would also like to thank ISKCON Govardhan Eco Village and Radhanath Maharaj and his community. They established an online Bhakti Vibe, of course. I'm able to do it from here in my own pace. So that's really a wonderful opportunity. I'm so grateful for it. And yeah, all these sannyasis, I took a little bit from all of them for this presentation, and I try to only watch ISKCON personalities to take inspiration from. So yeah, that's the end. But before we conclude, I just wanted to show 2 minutes because some of you know about me that I really like Kirtan. I'm really attracted to the holy name, at least I try to be. And I found a really nice video on YouTube about the 12 Mahajans. So maybe it's 2 minutes only. And maybe because all of you prepare for the Mahajans, maybe you can all relate to this content. Actually, you will see the Mahajan that you prepared for, or you will prepare for. And I thought it's just a nice way to conclude this presentation. So if you don't mind, I'll just play this. Hopefully it's gonna actually play. Yeah, so that's all I had for you today. Thank you so much for listening. And Srila Sukadeva Goswami Ki Jai.
Jai. Jai. Thank you.